Privacy and data security or protection in Ghana focuses largely on the regulation of the collection, use, disclosure, and care for personal data. Ghana's Data Protection Act is one of the enactments that outlines the rights of data subjects, responsibilities of data collectors or processors, touching also on compliance requirements. Today, we take a look at data protection in Ghana. This is Law Express, and my name is Noella Seidu.
Richard Odum-Mensah is a private legal practitioner with a passion for lawn tennis, which he enjoys at his free time. Richard Duah-Ansah is a private legal practitioner. Outside of his legal work, he plays tennis and drafts, teaches music to children, and plays the piano. Noella Seidu. She's a private legal practitioner and a consistent member of our 3-lawyer panel on the show every week. She also doubles as the host of the show. She likes to play tennis and read.
Data protection is an evolving area of the law, especially in this part of our world. And basically, our discussion today is focusing on the legal framework which regulates how personal data or information about people are collected, they are stored, or even processed, and even shared to other persons or institutions. And as I said, this is an evolving area of law because in other countries, this is a very serious matter because now the world thrives on data.
Yeah, data is money.
Data is money. People are mining people's information. You may be sitting here, or you may be in Ghana, but your information is in US.
Yeah.
And people are using your information to make money. And so it's very important that every country makes rules which regulates how people's information are collected and stored and even shared and processed.
Identity theft is a big thing where you're somewhere and your data has been harvested and another person is presenting as you. So when it comes to data protection, we're looking at basically the practices and mechanisms to secure sensitive data against corruption, theft, loss, or compromise.
Talking about data protection and then the privacy and all that, it's important to state that the Constitution, that really is the fundamental law of the land, has actually made provision for the protection of people's privacy. And so nobody should be able to take your or invade your privacy or take your things that are personal to you. And here we are talking about personal data. So you're talking about your name, your picture, your contact details, your bank account details, your medical records. So these are things that are personal to you, and that's what the law is trying to protect, so that people would not take those information and use it. Sometimes they use it for some unlawful purposes. Indeed, I mean, some people would take your information and misrepresent, pretend that they are you, and use that to.
That's
take
what's
your
normally
money.
used in the romance scams, right?
And so it's very important. I mean, if somebody can, even your picture on social media, somebody can take it and then present it somewhere as if it is you, and then has
defraud
access
people.
to you and defraud people and take your money and things like that. So I think it's
as a country, we have not really been serious about people's personal information, how we store it. I mean, I'm sure you have heard of interesting stories where you go on the roadside, go and buy Kofi Brookman roasted plantain. And you see the paper that has been used to wrap, and there's somebody's application letter.
CV.
Your CV, your application letter.
Oh, we've heard about result slips too.
Result slips.
Yes.
Which contains the person's name, age, sex, personal information.
Index number.
And it is by the roadside of the plant. I don't know. We don't ask question how did the plantain seller get it. It talks about how we were not serious about people's information.
But then we've made some inroads, and now we have a whole law, an act for that, the Data Protection Act. Normally on this show we do not stress too much on the legalese. But it's there to regulate data collectors and to protect the interests of the data owners. I see data as property. And so this is what the Data Protection Commission takes care of.
Exactly. And for a long time, well, the law itself was passed in 2012.
Yeah.
But for a long time, we have not heard a lot about it. Even till today, people don't really know a lot about it. And I think it's important that people know that their personal data are protected. And the companies, the other people that collect your data, even public institutions, the law places a duty on them to put in place measures to protect the integrity of your personal data.
And in Ghana, there are so many ways by which people collect data. When you go to the Momo the vendor, you take your number.
Exactly.
Sometimes people, they have books where they write the number. And I ask myself, so all these numbers they are writing,
they can use it for that. And you see, it's especially more risky because it's not just a number they take. Once they have your Momo number, they have your government name.
Right.
Exactly.
Because when they key it in, the number linked to that, the name linked to that number pops up. So at that point, they have your full name and they have your phone number.
And we willingly give them our numbers without thinking about some of these things.
Yeah.
And the question is, the mobile vendor, does he know that the obligations upon him, how he keeps that data? That book he is writing the numbers in. How does he keep it? Does he just leave it, anyone have access to it? He should know that the obligations. When you go to the hospital.
It's counsel, it's not just the book. I mean, as he goes on with the transactions, all those records are also on his phone. And that is, so he's collecting it two-way. He writes it down, and then it's on his phone as well.
Exactly. And if I'm not just these people who collect, who your service providers that you access some service, so they take your details. You go for meetings, they take your
at every workshop before you get in.
You write your residential address,
your temperature. That's your medical record.
Medical record. You write your location, your address,
where you're coming from.
That's right.
The last place you went to.
So it's a lot of data all over the place. You visit a place and they ask you to write your name, your telephone number. So all those information that we give out.
But one place we give info without even blinking is a hospital. I mean, you're already sick.
You are vulnerable. So whatever they ask you,
at that point, they can strip you of everything, including family history. And you would give it out because you have a need at that point.
Yeah, that's why, I
can imagine people who have access to the computer, and they store all of these things in computers. And the number of people who have access
to that particular machine.
You see, if you're a company and then you have collected people's information, personal information, you are supposed to put in place some measures to ensure that those information, to ensure the integrity of those information, meaning those information will not get into wrong hands. And when you are processing those information, like you collect, you exchange, you use it for the purpose for which you collected it, you are supposed to just use it for that purpose. If you collected my information that it's just to check attendance, you don't give that details to another person to now send me advertisements of things that I don't need. I've not said that I need something, then you are just sending adverts to me. And if you collect my data as a data subject and you use it for purpose, a particular purpose, and you want to use it for another purpose, you have to get back to me and get consent from me, And the law also requires that those who have collected the data, they have to put in place security measures to ensure that my data, my information doesn't get into some wrong hands.
I see that at the core of this whole conversation on data protection is honesty, accountability, and openness.
Right.
So if you collect data from somebody, first you need to be clear as to why you're taking that data. And when you process it, you must be true to your word and process it in the very manner that you stated to the data owner.
Exactly.
So even if you are not passing on the data to another person, but you decide to change the purpose. For instance, you took church members' data, probably just to see new attendees, to also check on gender, how many men, how many women, how many children. And subsequently, you decide that you want to use it to check those who are working and those who are not working. At that point, there's a new purpose.
Actually, in the law, if you are collecting my data, based on the purpose for which you are collecting it, there are some questions you don't need to ask me. You can't ask about my sexual orientation, for instance. So for instance, if you are a church, what do you need? Or if you are, let's say, an NGO or a company that I am coming, even I'm a service provider, and then we are interacting, you need information. What do you need my shoe size for? Or my whether I am LGBTQ, my view about LGBT. I mean, what do you need?
Or your choice of nutrition.
Nutrition or something. So
what happens with those kind questions, which probably just pop up as red flags, is you can see that they have hidden in a second layer of processing.
Exactly.
So you are there to give data on something specific, but they are asking other unnecessary things, which is necessary for somebody else's research or processing.
Right. So the subsequent processing must be compatible with the first collection.
Collect necessary data relevant to whatever you intend to process.
So data, those who manage people's data, they have to also give people an opportunity to amend their records.
Yeah.
So employers, for instance, once in a while you have to get your employees to come and check their records, their personal details.
Is it still same? I think social media does that. Every now and then you open an app and they check if this is still your email address or this is still your phone number.
Yes. I mean, some of these social media websites, I mean, every time we require that you provide security in terms of how you can have access to your account. And they request you to regularly update, just to make sure that they are also making sure that they secure your information.
And talking about the internet, you see, sometimes we complete forms, things online. You give a lot of information. We don't read. They say privacy. Privacy notice.
Yes. What you are consenting to exactly.
Yes. So that privacy notice will say that we will use your information for A, B, C. If we want to use for D, E, F, we will get back to you.
But sometimes they don't leave you with any choice. For instance, you want to set up an Apple phone. If you don't consent, you don't get to use the phone.
The law requires that they give you option. But just that, there are some services.
For that one, your option is not to use the service, okay? Because there are other competing brands as well. So you either take that I accept to use their gadgets, or you leave it alone.
Even as lawyers, how many of us read
the fine print?
Yes, I mean sometimes about 4 or 5 pages.
Yeah.
You just go down and just click.
Some people skip it because they know no matter what is there, they would still need that product and they will still take yes.
Anyway, there's an opportunity for you to always go back and tell them that stop processing my personal data.
Yeah.
The law requires that they give that opportunity. So you realize that even online, sometimes you keep getting some advertisements and then they say if you want to desubscribe or you want to unsubscribe. So they must provide that opportunity.
You know, there's a requirement for a person who processes personal data to do so in a reasonable manner. What is this measure? What's the measure of this reasonability?
Well, I mean,
reasonableness.
It's a question you ask, and like for us lawyers, we say reasonableness will be determined by the judge. But of course, they will look at the circumstance of the particular data that was collected, the purpose for which it was collected, and look around, and then they say this collection was reasonable or this processing was reasonable or not. But what is important is that, you see, data subjects, people that our data is collected, we have rights under the law. You see, you have rights in terms of what they should use your data for.
Okay.
So you can go back to them. Let's say you submitted your CV to an organization for employment opportunity. They invited you for an interview. You were not fortunate to get the job, but your CV is still with them. So you have an opportunity to ask them to maybe destroy your CV or whatever. And so
the argument also with reasonableness is the fact that there are two sides. The one requiring the information and the one submit. Usually, the power lies on the one taking the information. Assuming we are going to do registration for voting, we all want to go and vote, and we all have to give our information.
It's actually a duty, yes.
Yes.
Civic duty.
So the one receiving information has the power. So the law is trying to protect
the imbalance.
Yes, and so that reasonableness also means that you need the information you need. You should receive information just for what you need, not more than what you need.
I think reasonableness dovetails into minimality.
Right.
Where the data being processed, must be necessary, relevant, and not excessive.
That's right.
So it's unreasonable where it's excessive, unnecessary,
it's
and
not relevant to the purpose.
The very purpose for the collection and what you have advertised. What about collection of personal data directly and indirectly? We know that ordinarily, when you need somebody's data, you need to ask them. They consent to it, then they give it to you based on what you've explained, and you're required or bound to process that data within the parameters you advertised.
Right.
But we're looking at data contained in public record, for instance. At that point, there's a third-party arrangement, and there's no longer that requirement of personal collection.
Exactly. So, for instance, you yourself, if you put your personal information in the public, I mean, nobody needs to come back to you again for consent to.
So you go to Facebook, you post LinkedIn.
That's right.
Okay, that's where most of this happens. You've just gotten a new certificate, you put it up with your school details on it. Some people post their results because they've been impressive, so they want everybody to see. Other people post stuff about their birthday. And social media makes this happen so often that there's no privacy anymore.
In those instances, then there's no more obligation to get your consent.
You've waived that right.
You've waived that right. And sometimes with public offices, they don't need your consent to process your personal information. If it is for maybe NIA, National Identification Authority, or the GRA for tax purposes, DVLA. So those ones, because they may need it for some public purposes, they don't
probably
need
for the prevention, detection, investigation, prosecution, so prevention of crimes, punishment of offenses, and other things.
So when you go to the bank, for instance, most of the banks have linked their system with the NIA.
Now, there are private banks.
I remember it became an issue.
How are you consenting to NIA giving information until you give your Ghana card? But before the NIA and that whole setup, they were using licenses, driver's licenses, passports, voter IDs. How were they confirming the information on these particular documents?
So usually, from my understanding, usually you have to get the data. So they're actually getting data from
these entities directly.
From the Electoral Commission. You're getting our data from the DVLA. And
we did not consent to that, of course.
But just as I said, the law creates that obligation, but sometimes there are exceptions when it becomes necessary.
That is not a necessary exception. I don't see how a private bank.
No, but the bank needs your information for your good.
So they should let us sign it. So at that point, they should say that once you present an ID, we are allowed to confirm the validity of this ID with a state agency that issued it.
For all you know, it may be in some of those long things that they let
I like
you
the fact
sign.
that you said for all you know.
Yeah,
for all you know, it is nowhere.
Long things
But
you
if
sign
you look at
before
the
you
law is also
open,
very interesting.
at the time you are opening your bank account.
The law is interesting. It creates obligation, and because data now is also very necessary for production, it gives so many exceptions, which sometimes these banks and institutions can rely on under the law for purposes of taking this data.
We'll go for a break now. When we come back, we pick up from where we just stopped. This is Law Express. Stay tuned.
Yeah, so like you're saying, it's true. Sometimes your data may be processed in a way that is without your consent, but at least there are some instances where the law allows that your data could be processed without your consent. Sometimes it may be for your own benefit. You, the data subject. Maybe the bank may have to process your data for your own interest. And sometimes too, it is because the law requires. So for instance, GRA, for tax purposes, they can process your data without, getting a consent from you. Or the public institutions that collect people's data and then, process it. Insurance, National Health Insurance Authority, and things like that. Sometimes too, it may be for maybe the purpose of law enforcement, detection and prevention of crime.
Yeah.
So if the Office of Special Prosecutor is investigating you, or the Attorney General is investigating you, or any such body, YOCO, is investigating you, they can take your data from anywhere so long as it is to detect or prevent crime. So there are instances where at least the law allows that your data may be processed without your consent. But
once you find out, you have that option to request that they stop processing your data, unless it's for a statutory duty.
Well, that is a very debatable issue. I mean, in the sense that...
I mean, that touches on objection.
Well, it is your right to demand, but whether the institution has to follow what you are saying.
So you're looking at institutions that that process may be pursuant to a contract between you and them.
Yes.
So you are with a bank, and you can request that they stop processing your data.
Then
of
bank,
course,
then
if the consequences that you need to stop being in there, that's it. Or let's say you close your account, but they still have your data, right?
They do.
If you find out that they're still processing your data, you can request that they stop processing your data.
Yes, actually you have an opportunity to ask them, not just for them to stop, but for them to even retrieve and destroy
your data.
And then, again, you see, it also boils down to retention of personal data. Somebody may take your data, an institution, but how long should the person keep your data? Normally, it is governed by an institutional policy.
Yeah.
So the company says, when we collect your data, maybe interviewees, we'll keep them for 3 years, 2 years, whatever, and then we'll destroy them. So all those must be regulated by the institution's policy.
Yeah.
But the point is that they are not supposed to keep the data if there's no basis to continue to keep the data. What are you keeping my data for?
Yeah, you've applied for admission to a school, you filled out your forms, they did not admit you, they should automatically destroy the data. Why are they keeping your data?
So they have to keep it for a certain period of time required for.
So that is their policy. But the question is, why keep it if you know you're not going to process it?
Actually, the basic thing is that so long as you are done with them, they don't have anything to do with you. You are not their employer, you are not a student. They have to destroy. It's just that they might put in a policy that, okay, because of resources and other things, we need to keep it for 6 months, 1 year.
Yeah.
Because you may still apply to them. You may still apply to them. You can actually request to see what information about you they have.
Yeah, how much data they have on you.
Exactly, yeah.
And then you can ask that they make amendments.
You have an opportunity.
Where it is not correct information.
It has to be updated. You have an opportunity to get an updated information with anybody that.
So that goes straight into the quality of information.
Yes, correct.
So that the data controller has an obligation to make sure that the information he's collecting is accurate, is kept in a very good way to avoid its, to protect the integrity
Safety
of the data. So that I have given information that I am this, or I'm black, Then in your information, you go and write,
Indian.
I'm Indian.
Or maybe even at the time you were giving the information, you were single. Now you are married.
Yes.
Maybe you didn't have children. Now you have children. For instance, staff information.
Yeah.
So you must always get an opportunity to update it. Maybe the information there says that you had a certain level of educational qualification.
But
now you
you've
have
progressed.
upgraded. Yeah, you need to have an opportunity.
This goes especially to insurers. Insurers. You know, when you go out there are another group of people that can literally strip you of everything, especially if you're going for life insurance. They're checking your medical history, they're checking just too much. And when that changes, you need to indicate that.
That's right. That's right. And the good thing is that you always have an opportunity as a data subject, you see, to know where your data is, who has, how much of your data they have, and the status in terms of whether it's updated or outdated. Opportunity for them to delete some and to make changes and all that. There is an interesting twist. Maybe we can look at it
another day.
Yeah. So, for instance, online, let's say that somebody committed an offense, and it was the person was jailed, and it was published that the person has been incarcerated for this offense, and then the person appealed, and the person is successful on appeal.
Yeah.
So it means that the person's status has changed.
Yeah.
It means the earlier conviction has been erased by the appeal decision that says that you were not wrong.
Yeah.
But your information, the information about you online is that you were convicted of this offense and then you were incarcerated, you were put in prison or you were fined. What do you do? Now, who posted it there? You see, so again, you have an opportunity to get there. Whoever is the host or whatever, internet service provider, or so you have an opportunity, a right to be forgotten on the internet. It's not.
That's privacy.
Yeah, it's elsewhere. So in Europe, for instance, there's a whole big thing because they had to even amend the European data protection regulation, you know, to make provision for the right to be forgotten, because some two important cases went to court, and then the European Court of Justice
about this,
had to rule on that.
You need to look at the media.
Exactly.
So bloggers, they give half of the story, and that is your data. Because once your name is mentioned in the story and other identifiable information, your personal data is out there. Unless they want to use pseudonyms and other aliases in a way that people cannot trace the story back to you.
Yeah, and it's a balance, you know, between the right to the public to need to know.
Right to information.
Right to information, you know, and then the constitutional right of the media people to also carry out their job. Their job is to let people know. And by letting people know, they have to let people know what the facts are. And the facts will include somebody's personal information. It's a balance. So a balance between your privacy and then the right to freedom of expression and freedom of the media.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a balancing act that we must look at.
Let's look at the numbers, the commercials. Right to prevent processing of your personal data for direct marketing.
Right.
As I said, now data is money. People are mining people's information, your health, your medical, everything, just to make sure that.
So you go probably to a dentist, and the next time the toothpaste guys are sending you.
They come to your house and say we are
sending you text messages directly.
Yeah.
The next thing you know, there's a health insurance for that.
That's right.
So how do these people get to know that this is something you're likely to need at this point? And what are the odds that just right after your visit to a healthcare facility, you're getting industry-related advertisements?
Exactly. And that's where, you see, that's where then the obligation on the person that initially collected the information, that's where the obligation is.
To tell you that we are likely to give out your information for commercial purposes, for instance, for advertisements.
Yeah. To give you an opportunity to say no or yes.
Yeah.
But they don't ask you. They just send your information to this?
Because the assumption is that you would not know that it was them.
Yeah. But people can now read into the lines and see that, it follows. I came to the hospital. This was my problem. The following day, I am receiving
related.
Sometimes on social media, the kinds of information you watch, they keep sending you those things.
They will tell you it's an algorithm thing. Yeah. But, what are the odds? People are paranoid. I remember somebody telling me how he was making a phone call with social media in the background active about a particular thing, and the moment he went back to social media, that was the only thing they were pushing. And so he suspects that they were listening to his phone calls.
Of course, they are listening.
I don't have anything to prove that, but what are the odds? Is it just a mere coincidence? Another thing we overlook is you go into a shop, they tell you they have a promotion, some raffle, or they have a discount card. You collect it in the next time, and as part of the registration, they take your email address, phone number, and now it's like you're in a relationship with them. They are sending you Friday messages, Sunday messages. They are sending you Christmas messages, Easter messages, Eid messages. They are advertising further promotions, literally bombarding your phone at all manner of, all odd hours, at will.
Yeah. And you see, you have an opportunity. Again, I say that you have an opportunity.
But what are the odds? Are you going to go back to that shop to tell them, please cancel me? Or
you can do that. You can do that.
But assuming you left town.
Well, you find a way to do that. But if they still are not budging, you have an opportunity to report
because most times for the discount card, they're not going to tell you we'll send you all this. They just tell you that, if you collect this discount card at 20 cedis, you get 5% or 10% on every purchase. There's no signing at that point. You're not taking anything. They just take your info and quickly give you a card. Let's take your number as part of it to connect it to the card. So when you forget your card, we use the number to give you your discount.
That's right.
But then what do you find? By the time you get home, welcome to our service. And then every day they send you a message. They send you good morning messages and good night messages.
The data controller cannot absolve us from liability and say that it's not coming from him, because
those are direct messages with their company name.
Sometimes they may be coming from third parties. As a data controller, the Act requires that you take security measures or adopt security measures to make sure that
they are complicit in this situation. It's not like there's a breach or a lapse.
In some instances,
sometimes they are breaches.
Sometimes they personally, they will send the information like you were saying.
Yes, they are sending directly to you, soliciting for more business.
Ask them to stop. If they don't stop, you can report it to the Data Protection Commission.
What I was expecting is that these text messages should come with that thing to leave this, that option, press yes or press no, so you can. But no, they just send it because the assumption is that you consented and gave your phone number. But the question, I did not give you my phone number for text messages. It was given in connection with the discount opportunity. Probably if we drag it to the point where we say you're advertising more discounts, then I could say it's related. But why am I now getting your Christmas sale package of new things and a whole list of new things you've stocked?
And interested in doing the elections, you receiving certain text messages from certain political campaigns.
Yes,
all of them.
Especially
and not just by text.
Sometimes
on Facebook as well, and they were wishing people happy birthday, which was the shocking part for me. Meaning you have my date of birth and everything.
And sometimes, depending on where they're going to campaign,
then they tell you they'll be coming here. And after they've left, they thank you for being part of the event.
So, these are things that we can test the law on as to how those who have.
So I have a client that came by over that. It's something we followed up. He's passionate about this. Went all the way to the Data Protection Commission. No action till now. It might appear I'm calling out the commission, but this is the reality.
No. The commission has actually taken some action. But it's just that, for instance, in your case, they may ask, so you claim that you received the information from these people. Well, we can't hold brief for anybody. I don't know whether they acted or not, but they are supposed to act. But in their action, the person might say, well, maybe we did not send you the information.
No, this is something that was pretty straightforward. I don't want to discuss a client's case on set, but the reality, the evidence was there, and the person acted timeously, and what the action I expected to have taken place did not. And until now, there's no serious feedback as to what has been done, even if it's to say that we followed up and we couldn't trace a connection. That is okay. But nothing.
Interesting that test comes with your name.
Sometimes first names basis. It's as if you are.
Very. So these are issues. I mean, evolving aspects of the law, and people have to really test the law. We have to. Sometimes we have to go to court in respect of these matters. Yeah,
but when it's connected to an election, for instance, and the elections are over, many people just go back to bed. We sampled people's opinion on the topic for today. Let's take a listen and see if they have a sense of what we're actually discussing.
So if someone uses my personal data, I will sue that person because that person doesn't have that right to use my personal data, and I didn't give him that authority to use my data.
So for someone to use my information without my consent, the first thing I'll do is I'll ask the person who used my information without my consent, and if the information they used or the person used is very vital, I would even go ahead and maybe sue the person or the organization.
People are now becoming aware of their right to privacy, and especially when their data, personal information is used. And I think that I agree with them that when your personal data is used without your consent, you may have a case. Of course, as to whether the use of that, your personal data is justified is another thing. That's what we have been talking about, that you have your right to privacy. People collecting your data must be kept in a certain way, stored in a certain way, processed in a certain way, and it must be shared in a certain way. If it does and they do it in a breach of your right, you can take them on. And
yes, I mean, they are right in saying that they would sue whoever is using their personal information without their consent. But what we'll just add is that you may not want to sue immediately. You would want to, do some investigation, some more work. And sometimes too, because going to court may cost you a bit, you may want to, for instance, report the incident to the Data Protection Commission and then see what action they would take in respect of that breach. But that would be a breach of your privacy if somebody uses your personal data without your consent.
It's good that they talked about suing, because that brings us to the aspect of the conversation where we look at compensation for failure to comply by data controllers. So where there's non-compliance, leaving to the requirements or the guidelines for data protection, and then there is a breach, whoever has suffered this distress is entitled to compensation from that data controller. Of course,
that's correct. I mean,
there are differences, but there are differences which we need to add on, unless they can prove that in all circumstances they took all the necessary caution as required by the law.
Or maybe they were entitled to process it without your consent, like we were discussing earlier. Otherwise, not just the court, but even the Data Protection Commission can also impose fines and even make orders relating to compensation and things like that.
And rectification of records.
Exactly. So they may make orders. The Data Protection Commission itself has some powers. They can make orders that can be enforced in court. So I would encourage that. You see, most often than not, you try the commission first. If you feel there's
you're a peacemaker.
Yes, start with the commission.
I think the commission is in the middle between the individuals and the court.
That's the regulator.
Sure.
Yes, but I mean, before you go to the court, I think that it's easy to go to the
you're looking at
commission.
escalation of the situation, right?
Yes.
Because sometimes cost, sometimes because the commission time and all that. So if you make it a complaint, then the commission itself would do the investigation and ask the person to come and respond to it, and so more of the work will go to the commission. But if you are going to court, more of the work is on you and your lawyer. You to produce that. That's right.
We'll go for a break now. When we come back, we'll continue with our discussion on data protection. This is still Law Express.
Hi, I'm Michael, watching from Koforidua. I work with a government agency, and lately I've been receiving random SMS messages from loan and financial institutions offering me all kinds of services. I never signed up for anything, so I think they got my details from the Controller and Accountant General's departments. If that's true, isn't it a breach of my data privacy? What can I do about it?
Well, it could be a breach. Just that the only thing is that you think they got the information.
You're not even sure.
You're not sure. So it is for you to be certain that information came from the Controller and Accountant General's office. If it is from them, then clearly that will also be a breach because they're giving that information to that financial institution. It's not for the purpose for which they took that information. The question is it justified under the law? Maybe not. And that is where the commission is available to test it.
Yeah, so and again, like you say, you are not sure. Controller and Accountant General Department can say that we have not given the information out. So your first point is the people that are sending you is some company. So tell them, those people, they sent by some company. Tell them that you have not subscribed to anything, so they should stop sending you.
But here's the case: it comes in as a message with just 4 numbers that you can respond to.
No, they will put some phone number that call this because it's a service they are providing. So you follow that and then tell them why
am I to suffer for this? Like calling people
because
and
you don't know how they got your information.
So in that case, then the safety is to go complain to the commission that you have received this message. You didn't
from this person.
You don't even know how the person received.
And there's a breach, potential breach from one side.
Then the commission can now investigate and ask the company, where did you get my data from? Where did you get my number from to send me this information? Of course, under the law, they may be obliged to tell us how they got the law. I mean, how they got the information. And then you can now then take them on. So maybe the commission will be of help in this circumstance.
Yeah.
That's if you don't want to, on your own, like he suggested, take steps to request that they take your data down.
Good evening, Noella. I keep getting random calls and messages from eateries, financial institutions, and sometimes even suspected fraudsters. The only place I know that has all my details is my mobile network provider because of SIM registration. How are these people getting my number? Are telcos allowed to share our information like that? And what can we do if we feel our privacy has been breached?
And the question is, are you sure it's from the telcos?
It could be from your area Momo vendor.
It could be that you have filled some information.
Or you called in to order food.
And
they retained it.
So
and decided that you're their customer for life.
So again, maybe the best is to go to the commission and say, you are receiving this information. You don't know how they got the information. They may then investigate and get.
But they mean well. They want you well nourished.
I mean, you have not asked for it, so I mean, you don't.
You want to fast?
No, you would ask for it when you need it. So the point about the commission, when you go to the commission too, they will require some information from you.
Yeah.
Who is this person? So who is the respondent, the person that you are complaining against? Particulars of the people. So depending on how the information came, if it's eatery and it's a particular place,
that is
call the people
identifiable.
that they should remove You see, that's easier. Call them that they should take and keep records of your communication with them. If it's an email, you can send an email.
So if it persists, then
exactly,
then
you have record.
Level, yeah.
You have record where you have notified them to remove your contact details from their mailing list. If they still don't remove and you still receive, then you have a strong case to then report to the commission with that evidence. Then when the commission is acting, at least you may get some.
The NLA is a state agency, right?
Yes, National Lotteries
Authority.
Yeah.
So if you keep getting
lotto numbers,
unsolicited lotto numbers and ads, no, this is a real thing.
Yeah.
Too sure, then it pops on your phone. Can they use statutory duty to justify this?
You know, one time I received some of those messages.
Yeah, I have also received
I asked that, where did you get my contact details? And then the person mentioned a source, but I mean, as if they have access to.
So there are two kinds. The ones that come from a private phone number, suggesting something, and then there is another one that looks like an NLA something.
Right.
No, the shocking thing is that I've never really participated my whole life. I don't even understand how it works. But I was fascinated by how they would persist in sending those, and my worry was, how do they get my details and what other entities have my details?
That's right. And that's a challenge. That's a challenge we have as data subjects, people take our data and you leave your data in a lot
everywhere.
Of places.
It's like data footprints as you move.
That's right. So sometimes it's difficult who is responsible, but at least you know the person that sends it to you. So deal with it from that.
So on the light side, if a woman gives her number to a particular guy, consenting for him to call, and he passes it on to a third party, is that a breach?
Of course, it is. Fundamental thing is that I have not consented that you give my phone number to.
So if the third guy or the third party starts sending unsolicited messages, are you going to ask, where did you get my number? And then report to Data Protection Commission?
You are entitled to ask. But you see, there is this twist, this aspect where somebody will call somebody and say that, oh, we are in the old school platform. Can I get the other person's numbers? You mentioned somebody's name. I think we should refrain from giving people's telephone numbers to others.
Then again, that is another way people's data could get breached. You consented to being on a platform, but you did not consent to every other member of the platform reaching out to you. So I don't know what can be done. Maybe all these applications could look at it, where, now there's a link with which you can join the group platform. But there should be a way where your number is still hidden.
Yeah,
so that if the person on the platform already did not have your number, it doesn't pop as a number that they can pick, because they can use your DP to figure out that this is Richard Odum and then send you a private message, right?
That is if you have a DP.
Yes, but then there could be other indicators. You like to be in church a lot. You can put God is good, and automatically they know it must be Richard.
Yeah,
see, God is
so those
good
are.
I mean, it's
I think
it's tricky, but I think by technology they should be able to.
There should be a way to hide that. So you are on the platform, and if I already did not have your number, your name will not pop out.
That's right.
It could be maybe asterisks, hashtags, so that it's just there. But then you're all on the platform, and at that point, if you need the person, you need to figure out how to reach them privately.
That's right.
Maybe the social media people should take it up. I mean, I'm sure one of these days we get them, because every year, every time there are upgrades and security features. I mean, they are thinking about some of these things. So
let's turn our minds to conditional requests for personal data, where you're trying to access certain facilities or certain amenities or buy certain things, goods, services, and they tell you that, okay, if you do not give us your data, you cannot have that. I find that mostly online when it comes to reading certain resources and magazines. So you find some portal or something, and you click on it because there's some information you want to learn about, and they ask for your email address first or phone number first. So that is like a conditional request, indirect way of collecting your data, because you need this information at this particular point. You're vulnerable, and so they trade off the knowledge with your personal data and keep it forever.
Well, that's fair for that purpose, you see, for that purpose. But then subsequently, you must have an opportunity to opt out from putting you on.
So
your
I'm not talking
list.
about consenting ab initio. I'm talking about conditional requests.
Yeah.
In that situation, the only reason you gave it out was because you were pushed to the wall.
Sure.
You needed a good or a service, and that is illegal per the data protection laws. So you make it a precondition. If you say that, advertise that to get this, you need to give my number, and I know ahead, that's different. But you come there, and you're like, the only way I can give you healthcare is if you give me your phone number.
Oh, you're already there.
Yeah,
Like
you give me your
there.
phone number. So you are providing the goods, facilities, or services to the public. But the precondition is that they must give you their information for that.
I mean, so that's why we talk about undue influence and
because you need
contract.
it. If you need that particular
and
service.
sometimes they just give you a first 3 lines of the information. You are reading and it's interesting. Then the parts are missing. They say you have to subscribe or enter your email before.
And this is actually an offense.
Yeah.
No, yeah. For conditional, so that one, you are a general provider, general service provider, or to the public.
You sell goods, yes, to the public, yes.
Or maybe goods, you provide goods to the public. That one, you shouldn't make it a precondition. Yes, that one.
But there are still exceptions, where it's in furtherance of the rule of law, in the public interest, and it's pursuant to an enactment. But the reality is, if you're just doing that for your own gain, to gather people's data, so you go like, look, I'm selling water, and you choose a very dry place, but before what's the relationship between selling water to me and taking my phone number? So before you give me the water, you take my phone number.
Yeah, I mean, those exceptions, you realize that they relate to the maybe public institutions, that because those exceptions will be still for public purposes.
Exactly.
So for private companies or individuals that provide service or provide goods to the public, you shouldn't make it a condition. They shouldn't make it a condition that to access this service or to purchase these goods, you need to give me your contact details. That's what the law frowns on. Even after the exception, it's just there for the public.
I mean, for sometimes for educational purposes, you have to access certain websites of certain institutions. You should be a student, so they want to know whether you're a student.
Yeah, if you ask for the student ID as an access code, that is okay.
Yeah.
But that is different. But this is to the general public. So you're out there just harvesting people's data because they want a certain service or a particular good.
And then you only have that information on good, so you want to exploit that. I think that is where the law makes it unlawful for you to do that.
Today's conversation has bordered on data protection. And although we limited it to the owners of the data
subjects,
or the data subjects, we touched a little bit on controllers as well. We intend to have another conversation on data protection, but this time looking at the responsibilities of the data controllers. As I said at the beginning, these practices and mechanisms outlined by the law to secure the sensitive data of individuals and persons generally, data subjects you would call them, against the corruption, theft, loss, or compromise of their data. We've come to the end of the show. Thank you very much. Today we had 2 Richards on the show. I was the only non-Richard on the panel. I was joined today by Richard Odum-Mensah and Richard Dua Ansah. My name is Noella Seidu. Our conversation has been on data protection. Until next time, goodbye.